The Mariners promoted Bryan Woo up from Double-A earlier this year to pitch in the Major League rotation, and he's done pretty well, but he has a huge problem with left-handed hitters. And I'm going to do a screen share breakdown here to dig through kind of some of the stat portals that I use to analyze pitchers, show you some cool stuff, and determine whether we actually think he'll be able to correct this problem versus left-handed hitters. It's a Bryan Woo breakdown. Let's get it going. All right, Bryan Woo, 23 years old, 6'2". He was called up from Double-A this year after pitching 44 innings. 2.05 ERA is really strong. And he's done a pretty good job. I mean, getting called up from Double-A, we're getting to the point, I think, in the minors where teams are, especially like the Mariners, who are a pretty stuff-driven organization, where they've optimized to stuff, try to increase that stuff score, so to speak, maybe regardless of other outcomes of the pitcher, which we can talk about another day. But when a guy has major league stuff in the minor leagues now, I think certain teams, in particular the Mariners, are much more comfortable accelerating that guy really quick, especially when they run into an issue like Robbie Ray going down earlier in the year and they need innings, and they know Bryan Woo has good stuff. I mean, I get he's got a 5 ERA. That's not good, but this dude's 23 years old. I like the came out his walk. He's given up a lot of home runs. The FIP's down at 4.29. You could argue he's got a bit unlucky. This is more looking at what he has done and figuring out how much better he's going to be. And the really apparent thing with Bryan Woo, if you've ever seen his splits, he's getting decimated by left-handed hitting. And we'll see that grayed out right here. I mean, I don't know of any pitcher in baseball with larger splits right now in like a 40, 50 inning sample than Bryan Woo. It's not good. He's given up 7 of his 8 home runs to left-handed hitters. 386 average, 453, 771. I mean, righties are just, you're having a massive problem as a right-handed hitter against him. Lefties, not so much. The K- walk here difference is crazy. The FIP difference is just absolutely insane. I mean, I can't really think of a pitcher coming up and having this large of splits in a really long time. And yeah, you could argue some of this stuff is natural luck or whatever, but I mean, it's clear that lefties are seeing him better. And that is interesting to me. And we're going to dig into why we particularly think that is. And first off, why he's so strong versus right-handed hitters in particular. So let's dig into Bryan Woo. He's a 4-seam guy. You see release height here is really low. So 4'9" is probably almost more than a half a foot lower than the average major league release. I think most guys are around 5'8", 5'9". He's sub 5 feet. That creates probably some deception that even models won't be able to capture. It also creates a harder ability for him to get behind the ball, particularly, I think. And yet, despite that, he's able to get, 15 inches of induced vertical break from 5, basically, we'll say 5 foot release, 4'9", is really strong. That's why this ball approaches the zone, I think, so flat. What makes it really good, that vertical approach angle of the pitch is very flat into the zone. That's a combination of his release height, where he's locating the ball, and also just how much backspin he's actually getting on it. So this does seem grade out well. Grades out kind of like an average pitch, but I think if we were to jump over to Driveline's model, they're a little more favorable on it. This is Driveline Baseball's model. Yeah, they're 114 on it. Their standard deviation is slightly different. So I think they're around 30 or 40. So they see this as slightly above average. Saris's model sees it as straight average right at 98. Not too big of a difference. They like it a little better. That's probably just valuing that low slot ride a little more. Really strong whiffs, though. So he's gotten really strong results on it, despite maybe some of the metrics not looking great. The stuff score is not looking great. That's probably missing some part of him as a pitcher. Again, we're looking particularly at right-handed hitters right now for him. Well, he's doing well. Again, the good splits. The guys who haven't been able to hit him, sub 300 xwOBA, sinker pretty strong, 4-seam strong, slider strong. Slider's a sweeper, and this cutter is more of a secondary slider. So I'm going to call this your sweeper, and I'm going to call this a slider. I'm not going to call it cutter slider, because I think that's a sweeper, personally. A couple changeups thrown in there actually look pretty good from a movement standpoint, but just doesn't throw it a lot. So yeah, it's a 4-pitch mix to righties, and it's done really well. And we could take a peek at plots, too, to see where he's throwing these pitches. So again, righties are going to be here. This is looking from pitcher perspective. He works a way to up with the 4-seam, so that's interesting. Here, you could probably almost elevate that more and probably get even more swing and miss. The sinker's in, keep guys from diving out over the plate, because, again, cutter slider are both very similar location here. Not a ton used. He's really heavy fastball guy to right-handed hitters. What's that? That's like 80%. That's a lot, but it works. Even if you know it's coming, it's working for him. Again, the chase here, especially on the sinker, is really strong. Sinker's a good pitch, too. That's naturally, I think, what his arm slot's going to lend itself to more. And it's done really well. The chase there is really strong, too. It's inner third, as we just saw in our plot here to righties. So I think that sinker is really important to his repertoire versus righties. If he's a 4-seam guy working outer lane here, and then he slider cutter off that. Two different variations of a pitch with a similar glove side tweak to it. I think guys just sit probably closer up on the batter's box and just dive over the plate versus him, and he has probably a lot of trouble versus righties. But the ability to throw the sinker more than any other fastball in his repertoire is huge. Ability to kind of keep guys off the plate, make them respect something inside. You know, it's kind of old schooly style thinking, but I do think it's totally true in that respect in talking to hitters in Major League Baseball about how they approach guys who kind of have only one thing going one way. Now let's flip over to lefties. Much different story. The mix here is slightly different. Again, righties, he's going 2 fastballs 80% of the time. He's mixing slider cutter off that, getting above average whips pretty much in everything. You jump over to lefties and it's different. It's still kind of your kitchen sink approach, but it's 65% four seam. Again, it's a decent amount of lift for the release. Like, I think the average vertical break around that 5-foot release is probably something like 12 or 13 inches. So he's 2-3 inches above that. Theoretically should work. And it's not doing terribly, honestly. You know, it's 22% whiff is squarely average. The chase is actually pretty good. The extra one contact, I think fastballs are probably somewhere in the high 3s, low 4s. So that's not even that bad overall. But he's just getting jumped with him. You know, we're going to take a look at plots and some of the damage he's allowed on the four seam. It just hasn't been great. This cutter, in particular, he added, I believe, late. It's one thing I'll point out. I don't think I mentioned that when I was talking righty approach with him. But this cutter's a new pitch for him. If we could jump back to Driveline's portal here, I think we see when he started throwing it. So yeah, he got called up in 6-3. He was sinker four seam slider. And then 7-3. So a whole month later, he started throwing this cutter. That's a key thing to point out that I should have mentioned earlier, but good. It's a solid pitch, right? 118. It's above average cutter. So this yellow dots you're looking at are not something that he came up into the league with, but I think something he quickly added. And also interesting that he's throwing it right, and left. I think makes sense from a whiff standpoint to righties. And he brought this in because he really needed something against left-handed hitters. And I think he just ported it over to the right-handed side of the plate in terms of those guys against him. But he's throwing it a lot. He's throwing it 10% of the time. Maybe not a lot, but throwing it a reasonable amount of the time. 88, solid. Stuff plus is fine. Whiffs on it are okay. Chase isn't great. Swellbound on contact is good. It's the one pitch in his repertoire that's actually able to limit contact. That might even be slightly high for a cutter. But it's good. Like, that's a good pitch. You know, the ability to not be able to find the zone with it a ton, 43% of the time, isn't good. I think most cutters, because of how they're oriented and how guys get behind them, you generally think of them as more in-zone pitches. They're not really there to generate whiffs. They're generally there to stay off-barrel. East-west, generally off-barrel. North-south is generally where you miss bats. So he's a pretty east-west guy. You see everything has some backspin to it in his repertoire. As we look at our short form movement plot here, this horizontal line at 0 is essentially saying anything at this line is only dropping because of the effects of gravity from its resulting movement. Anything above it has some kind of backspin interpreted off how that pitch actually moved by the time it gets to the plate. So everything in his repertoire has backspin, and everything is within probably a 15 or so inch vertical break window. That's probably limiting some of the effectiveness. He's a very east-west guy from that slot, despite the ability to kind of pop that four seam up in the zone. But everything else in the repertoire is just not doing well. You know, it's interesting. The extra one on contact and everything else isn't great. The sinker, that's probably running into barrel from a righty to a lefty, so I'm not entirely sure why he's throwing that. But it's interesting because, the four seam underlying metrics don't look terrible on it, but what I think he's run into is probably he's gotten a bit unlucky with it, but the key thing I want to point out with it is where he's allowed the slug. I'm going to go over to Savant now, and this is just left-handed hitter slug allowed this year to him. And you can see a lot of it is on the fastball. So despite the fact that we have a 401 X-Web on contact there, which isn't that bad, he's giving up a lot of damage on the offering, which relates back to the idea that, you know, something might be happening, I don't want to say from a tipping standpoint, just from an execution sequencing or location standpoint, that he's getting beat. And I do find it interesting that a lot of this is coming kind of middle down in the zone. Let me take a drink quick, excuse me. A lot of this is coming middle down in the zone. You see this band too, across the middle of the plate, right? Where guys are just teeing off. Let me see if we can take a peek at, I don't know how this is gonna play back. And we got some video. Yeah, it's Lamont Wade. I paused it, excuse me. Let's roll that back quick. So 2-0 count, 2-0 pitch. Looks like, I don't know if that's Cal Raleigh or who is that behind the plate. Kind of sets up central target. He just goes inside and gets drilled. Yeah, that's not ideal. That's kind of like a gimme over 2-0 fastball. I'm not sure if I love that. Here's Brandon Belt. This is a 1-1 pitch. They're setting up inside. Man, this keeps pausing. Excuse me. Let's do it again. 1-1 pitch, inside setup. And he hits a spot and just gets teed there. That's a barrel. Oh, not actually a barrel. Kind of barely got out, but still a hard hit ball ends up as a home run. And yeah, these, I don't necessarily know. I think the Mariners are a team that does lean towards that central target idea. This is, I think, the first start he made. Jonah Heim. A little higher target there. This is an 0-2 count. And he misses down. Sharp hit ball. Let's roll that one more time. Yeah, that's tough. It's tough. So, I mean, a couple of those you could argue are command, but a lot of this stuff is just middle of the play. Here's Max Kepler. Let's see, this is a cutter now. This is that new cutter for him. Let's see where target is. Yeah, it just backs up. I think you see, I don't know if that's Cal Riley again. I'm not sure who the Mariner catcher is, but he's drifting inside. I think they want that pitch somewhere here. And it's arm side miss. Again, that's not like a barrel, but it's a hard hit ball. The sinker there. Slider here. We'll go Kyle Tucker. This is a fastball. Another ground ball. Yeah, that's a pull miss. They were going away. Let's see if we can see setup there. Something down, maybe up, maybe away. I'm not sure. And he pulls inside. So it's tough to kind of isolate why he's been so bad to me versus left-handed hitting. Again, like, I think there's something to this plot. The fact that he's missing balls in the zone, and a lot of that is coming centralized. Also, the fact that it's all coming within a horizontal area that's kind of almost oddly enough lines up, now that I think about it, with how his movement works, right? We're talking about everything being within this 0 to 28 vertical break area in terms of induced vertical break. And yet everything he's throwing is in a narrow window of that vertical break. So he's just being hunted middle of the plate laterally. And guys are probably, lefties in particular, again, are looking kind of middle. He's allowed some stuff up, but I think you take that if you can get the ball up more effectively. It kind of just seems like, let's see lefty plot too. Here's lefty plot. So yeah, fastball's middle to middle up. The sinker's away, similar location righty. The slider's down, the cutter's down. The changeup's kind of over the plate. 6.6%, not high. So yeah, I guess you could argue like you want to bring this up. Maybe he wants to go more out over here. But then that probably ruins your slider and cutter line to some extent. If he likes that fastball kind of up inside or more middle, he could probably work slider cutter off that more. If he were to take that pitch up and away, I'd be curious to see how that affects the interaction of the other pitches. But the other point is that the slider and the cutter haven't been particularly good to left-handed hitters, so I don't think he should be worried about that. It feels more like an execution thing to me. I think I've seen on Twitter sometimes people say, you know, he's got to figure out something with left-handed hitters. My argument with Bryan Woo is that he has the mix to left-handed hitters. I get it's an east-west profile, and he's not really differentiating too much vertically. As you can see here, again, we're talking about everything between a really narrow window of vertical break. But I think he has the tools. Like, the changeup is a good pitch. Like, I get that the stuff plus there's an 84, but that's 89 miles per hour, and it's separating about 12 inches off his four seam. You know, and he's in zone with it, too. It's allowed some slug. You know, the extra on contact there, damage stat, and it's not generating whiffs. I wonder whether there's something in there from like a split change perspective. We saw Joe Ryan go to that. These are actually pretty similar pitchers, Joe Ryan and Bryan Woo, I think, from that flat approach forcing that they throw a lot. And Joe Ryan was able to figure out everything off the repertoire because of that pure fastball. This gets back to the broader idea of teams wanting a good fastball, which I believe Bryan Woo does have, despite some of the stuff scores here. It's low slot ride. I think it'll work. It's at least average to maybe better, especially if he picks up some velo, adds some carry, raises the release height slightly. You know, I think there's ways to get that pitch to average. Joe Ryan figured it out with the split change. I think he went to a sweeper as well. Woo already has the sweeper. He's working on some kind of changeup here. He's not thrown a lot. Clearly not too confident with it. But I think I generally disagree with the idea that he needs to figure out something to left-handed hitters. I think he has the repertoire. 5 pitches. You know, maybe it's too many. Maybe he's got to kind of focus on the ones that are working better. But I don't think you can reduce the repertoire down to four-seam cutter because, as we just saw, most of the damage is coming off the four-seam. So there's probably some combination here that works for him. I don't know if it's an off-season project. I don't know if it's a splitter to get more depth. I don't know if it's some kind of curveball that exists down here to give respect to lefties. But I think he has the foundation to be a really good major league starter. It's just, it feels like an execution thing to me, which is understandable because when he's 23 and he came up from AA, like, I don't know how much we could really expect from him from an execution standpoint. His misses are just getting pounded, you know, and he's got good secondaries. I like him as a pitcher overall. They accelerated him pretty quick, and he's running in some of those growing pains. as we finish off with just the splits one more time to take a look. I don't mean to bag him here. It's crazy to me that he's allowing this much slug, you know? Again, even like the XFIP and stuff, it's a little lower, but it's still pretty damaging. If you're if you're streaming him or looking at him in any fantasy format or betting capacity, like, you got to make sure you're looking at a lineup that has more righties. Just don't think he's a guy that's going to be able to work with much lefties right now. But again, going back to the mix, I think there's something here for him versus lefties. I'm just having trouble figuring out what it is. I don't know if it's sequencing or what. I like the foundation, you know. Maybe not as much four seam. Figure out a better change, maybe a split of some kind to get it down here. I don't know if that's easy to do. I don't know if that's hard to do. More command on that. You could probably scrap sinker sweeper and just go four seam cut split to lefties. Maybe jam the cut more inside, up away fastball. But again, like, I'm assuming in that phrasing I just used that he can spot those pitches in those places. It seemed like, as we saw from some of this damage, it's all misses. Like, it's inside, he misses arm side of the cut. It's away, he pulls in. Like, that stuff converting into more damage is maybe something that slows down for him. You know, but yeah, he has a problem with left-handed hitters. I think he'll fix it, though. I'm relatively confident in the ability to have the mix and kind of go from there, and we'll see. But maybe it's concerning to some people that he already has the pitches and they're not effective versus the handedness. But to me, it's more of a tweak thing, especially coming up from AA. So let me know what you thought of this format, what you think of Bryan Woo in the comments, as always, and thanks for watching.